2338 Dire penalty. Sunny jumped down to the surface of the obsidian bridge, testing it carefully. The bridge was hundreds of meters across and dozens of kilometers long, arching gracefully above the glowing sea of crimson clouds. It was not monolithic, but rather an airy and ethereal structure of chaotically interwoven streams of obsidian that glanced far more fragile and delicate than it was supposed to be. In truth, Sunny suspected that even if he had access to his full titanic strength, he would not be able to put a dent in the obsidian bridge. So, he did not have to worry about it collapsing beneath him. Turning into a shadow, he glided across the smooth obsidian with great speed. Sunlight burned in the depths of the volcanic glass-like embers, and the winds howled above. Kai and Slayer followed behind, escorted by the insect, like shades. He could have carried them all to the distant mountain through the shadows, but there was a possibility that they had gotten the rules of Ariel's game wrong, and that the being dwelling beneath the clouds would react negatively to the Ash domain advancing. So, Sunny wanted to leave himself a chance to react and retreat in case that happened. Luckily, nothing of the sort transpired. This was good news for Sunny, since he planned to rely heavily on their ranged advantage when dealing with the ice hive. The mountain was perforated by countless tunnels that formed a complicated network. Besieging the crystal wasps in their home would be quite a treacherous affair, so Sunny wanted to lure at least some of them out first. Kai's new arrow was going to be of great help, in that regard. Since it could phase through solid matter, he could use it to wound the snow abominations while they were hiding in the depths of their ice fortress, enough so to send them into a rage, at least. Sunny had expected that the crystal wasps would hurry to the surface themselves, forming a solar array to bombard the attackers with gigantic beams of incinerating light while they crossed the bridge, but that did not happen either. The nightmare creatures seemed quite comfortable waiting for the adversary in the depths of the hive, where they had both the terrain and the numerical advantage. However, Sunny's place met a different obstacle. Just a few moments after stepping on the bridge, he suddenly emerged from the shadows and swayed, a strained expression on his face. Ah, that feels awful. He expected that attacking a square of the snow domain would weaken him, just like the CG Eastal wasps had been weakened when attacking the Ash Castle. However, he did not know just how severe the penalty would be. Sunny felt sapped of his vitality, frail and feeble, as if he had aged several decades in a single moment. His body was weakened, while his soul was frozen, the essence circulating sluggishly as the rate at which it was replenished fell drastically. Behind him, Kai staggered in the air, while Slayer came to an abrupt halt and slid across the obsidian surface, keeping her balance with the grace of a dancer. Her eyes remained cold and menacing, but her brow curved in a subtle scowl. Even the obsidian wasps seemed to slow down. Sunny looked back, at the ashen slopes of the fuming volcano, wondering if the weakening hex would be removed if they returned. Kai and Slayer had already shown that they can hit targets on the distant mountain from the edge of the caldera, after all, so, crawling back to start a purely ranged assault was a possibility. It was not a very good decision, though, because it would take Kai numerous hours to significantly reduce the number of enemies from that far, let alone to eradicate the ice hive completely, if that was even possible. And the time they had to conquer the snowy peak would run out as soon as the sun disappeared behind the horizon. Sunny frowned. They were close to the middle of the obsidian bridge, just about to escape from under the clouds of ash and see a clear sky. Looking at Kai, he said evenly, "Kai, try wounding one of them from here." The charming Archer landed on the glowing obsidian and retrieved the enchanted arrow from his quiver. The crystal arrowhead glistened as he knocked it on the string, and then nothing happened. Kai struggled with his bow for a few seconds, muttering something to himself, then lowered it with a complicated expression and looked at Sunny. "I can't," he grimaced. "I can't draw my bow. It's too heavy." Sunny blinked a few times. Curse it all. So that was what it meant to be suppressed by the snow domain, which spanned 8 out of 9 peaks of Ariel's game. Or rather, that was what it meant to attack a mountain surrounded by the snow domain from all sides except for one. Sunny sighed, knowing that his plan had gone belly up. He could potentially manipulate the black bow to make it easier to draw, but that would not help the situation any weaker, and Kai would not even be able to scratch the crystal wasps, let alone kill them. Slayer was in a somewhat better position, but she was not going to be of great help either. Both of them were transcendent, and weakened even further by the snow domain. Facing scores of great beasts in battle would be a tall task for them. I might have underestimated how important the role of the domains is in this game. So, what was he supposed to do? Kai seemed to be thinking the same. "What do we do, Sunny?" Sunny remained silent for a few seconds, then looked at the distant mountain with a concerned expression. There was only one thing left to do, really. He smiled chillingly. Single quote. You two make sure that none of them escape. Kai raised an eyebrow, confused. Escape? Escape from what? Sunny took a step forward, summoning the helmet of the Jade Mantle. His low voice sounded even when he spoke. Single quote. From me. With that, he suddenly disappeared, taking the obsidian wasps with him. Kai and Slayer were left alone on the bridge, bathed in the scarlet radiance of the setting sun. Almost at the same time, the shadows within the ice hive stirred, surging forward, and a fearsome figure encased in an armor of inky, black jade stepped out of them, facing a rattled crystal wasp like an omen of death. 2339 Invading the ice hive. Sunny found himself in a cave made of ice. His turbulent thoughts settled, giving way to the cold and tranquil state of battle clarity. There were around 50 crystal wasps left in the hive, each of them a great beast. The network of tunnels and caverns was their fortress, while Sunny was weakened as an invader into the snow domain. Each nightmare creature was more powerful than he was due to the rules of Ariel's game, but that was a trifling matter. After all, Sunny had come this far by facing enemies who were much more powerful than him. Even if he had enjoyed the ultimate privilege of being the strongest monster on the battlefield as of late, the tenacity of a cunning killer was in his blood. The Crystal wasps were mere beasts, great beasts, but beasts nonetheless. They were mindless death machines that only knew the frenzied madness of bloodlust. His intelligence was a deadlier weapon, so he was not too concerned about his diminished power. Their great numerical advantage was a more pressing threat. Even though the tunnels of the ice hive were somewhat narrow, Sunny knew that he could be easily overwhelmed here. He had his shades, naturally, but they would simply be torn to shreds if he unleashed them immediately. After all, there were fewer of them than there were crystal wasps at the moment, and they were being weakened by the snow domain as well. That said, Sunny was in a far better situation than he had been on the Forgotten Shore. Not because he had become infinitely more powerful, his enemies had as well, but because there were more tools at his disposal. He was going to destroy the ice hive by using his mind, his versatility, and his superior skill. His shadow sense spread into the depths of the mountain, enveloping every corner of the enormous hive. In a heartbeat, he perceived and fathomed every tunnel, every intersection, and every cavern hidden in the ice. He also perceived the location of every crystal wasp guarding the frozen fortress. Some were gathered in vast caverns in groups, waiting. Some were patrolling the tunnels alone or in pairs. Some were busy preparing the fortress for the attack. Sunny did not sense any traps, but he did discover a complicated system of crystal chimes that answered to the smallest movement of air, and would therefore notify the crystal wasps if an intruder disturbed their dwelling. Because of it, the ice hive was permeated by a delicate, melodious tinkling. Sunny smiled. In the next moment, the shadows all across the network of tunnels surged and rose. The shadows did not attempt to wound or kill the crystal wasps, instead, they merely turned into solid walls of obsidian, blocking off myriad tunnels. The abominations instantly stirred, moving to destroy the obstructions. However, even with their great power, destroying the solid mass of mystical obsidian was going to take some time, especially because it kept repairing itself. Sunny did not just block the tunnels randomly. Each obstacle was placed strategically, and for a single purpose. He wanted to isolate the crystal wasps from each other. To kill them one by one. After all, even though Sunny was disadvantaged in terms of power, he also possessed some advantages. Among them, two stood out the most: his awareness and his mobility. Let's start. By then, the crystal wasp in front of him, a solitary seeker of the ice hive, was already lunging forward. Sunny might not have been faster than a great beast supported by the snow domain, but he was a warrior. The crystal wasp, meanwhile, was nothing more than a pest. The black Odachi was already turning into a long pike. Sunny slammed its butt into the ground and braced it with his leg, turning himself so heavy that the ice beneath his feet began to crack. He channeled his will into the blade of the pike, commanding it to pierce the adversary, and into its shaft, commanding it to remain whole. Then, he commanded himself to hold. The great beast was flying at him at spectacular speed, so it had no time to stop. Its own momentum impaled the nightmare creature on the pike, the impregnable crystal carapace shattering as the black blade pierced its chest and exited through the crack between the thorax and the abdomen. Naturally, the malevolent wasp was still alive, straining to push its body along the pike's length to rip Sunny apart. He strained his muscles, raising his weapon, and the massive abomination impaled on it. Then, with a hiss, Sunny thrust the pike upward with all his might and pinned the nightmare creature to the tunnel's ceiling. Before the wasp could shatter the shaft of the manifested weapon and free itself, 7 black spikes shot from the ground like pillars, obliterating its body and causing the tunnel to collapse. You have slain an adversary. Sunny was already someplace else. Stepping through the shadows, he appeared on the opposite side of the ice hive, deep inside the mountain, in a small cave where another solitary crystal wasp was digesting the remains of its fallen kin. Those of the abominations, who had escaped the previous battle with grievous wounds, were mercilessly devoured by the less damaged beasts to mend their wounds. The ice hive seemed to operate according to the principles of ruthless practicality. Sunny did not have time to observe how the crystal wasps turned their food into crystalline liquid and how they used that liquid to heal and strengthen themselves. Manifesting a sword out of shadows, he severed one of the nightmare creature's legs at the joint and danced away from its retaliation. The rest was simply a matter of technique and swordsmanship. Despite the great beast's superior size and physical might, Sunny rapidly crippled it, thus reducing its agility, and then beheaded the creature with a precise strike. You have slain. That's 2. He was gone by the time the corpse of the nightmare creature hit the ground. 49 to go. 2340. Conquering Tyrant. Sunny began with the crystal wasps who had been caught in his shadow maze alone. The obsidian barriers he had erected were strong, but not as strong as they would have been outside the snow domain. The enraged great beasts would destroy them sooner rather than later, so he had to act rapid. His hunt was rapid and brutal. Using Shadow Step to instantly move between distant areas of the ice hive, he picked the stragglers off one by one. His combat skill and indomitable killing intent were more than enough to slay the fearsome crystal abominations, even if clashing with so numerous great beasts in quick succession was rapidly depleting his stamina. In a narrow tunnel, Sunny severed a menacing crystal wasp in 2 with a razor-sharp odachi, and then pierced its head through the eye when the upper half of the nightmare creature kept crawling at him in a murderous frenzy. In an ice cave where drops of water were falling into a vast and clear pool from a forest of crystal stalactites, he kept another great beast at a distance with a spear for a few seconds, then found an opening and split its abdomen open with a vicious strike. Its head shattered under his boot a second later. In a passage so narrow that a single crystal wasp could barely fit inside, Sunny closed the distance to a frenzied great beast, diving past its scythe-like legs, tore its carapace open with the gauntlets of the jade mantle, and shattered the delicate flesh beneath with his fists. The melodious sound of wind chimes was drowned out by the clangor of battle, thunderous thunderclaps, and the loud ringing of shattering crystal. By the time Sunny was done dealing with the solitary nightmare creatures, he was faintly out of breath. The entire slaughter had taken him no more than a couple minutes, and he had never stopped moving, seamlessly stepping between the shadows as if the sequence of brutal clashes was one uninterrupted battle. 37 to go. That was how many crystal wasps there were left in the ice hive. Sadly, things were going to get harder from now on. The rest of them were grouped together, and as he dealt with smaller groups, the larger ones would break through the shadow barriers and fuse. But that was all right, because by killing the solitary abominations, Sunny had made sure the number of his shades swelled. It had to swell a little more, though. 14 more will do. 14 great beasts, such a trifle. Wincing as if in pain, he assumed the form of the shadow spawn and dove into the shadows, holding a black odachi in each of his 2 pairs of hands. Shooting from the darkness in a large vertical cavern, he jumped onto the wall and ran up its icy length, his claws sinking into the hard ice. Dim, diffused light was streaming from somewhere far above, and the 2 crystal wasps waiting on the wall instantly moved, rushing down to obliterate him. Because of where the source of light was located, their long shadows reached Sunny before the nightmare creatures themselves could. He slashed at their shadows with both of his swords, causing the wasps to let out ear-piercing screeches and fall down, crashing into the distant floor of the cavern while convulsing in agony. By the time they recovered enough to move again, he already plummeted down and shattered one with the unbearable weight of his body. There was a deafening boom, and the floor of the cavern cracked as a cloud of ice podgy tickles and crystal shards rose into the air. A split second later, Sunny emerged from the mass of pulverized ice, his 2 swords lashing out to pierce the vital points of the remaining nightmare creature. You have slain. He dove into the shadows, carrying the twitching corpse with him. Emerging in a cave where 2 more crystal wasps were furiously attacking an obsidian wall, he tossed the corpse at one of them and attacked the other. You have slain. And so it went. Ah, I'm tired. Even at this breakneck speed, Sunny felt nervous that he would not be able to slaughter the entire hive before the sun disappeared behind the horizon. What would happen if the Ash Domain's move came to an end before the snow figure protecting the square was slain? Considering how hastily the crystal wasps retreated from the volcano in the morning, nothing Sunny would want to learn. Soon enough, he ran out of pairs of nightmare creatures to kill. His lungs were burning, and his heart, both of them, since he was still in the Shadowspawn form, were beating wildly. There were a few cracks on the jade mantle, and a few hideous cuts on his body. He did not bleed, naturally, but the insidious cold was seemingly seeping under his skin, making him feel even weaker. Damn it! Sunny let out a low growl. By then, the obsidian barriers had already fallen, and the remaining wasps, more than 20 of them, gathered in a vast cavern, ready to rush like a crystal avalanche to find and destroy the intruder. But Sunny did not make them wait. Instead, he stepped into the shadows one last time and emerged in the cavern, looking at the 24 nightmare creatures from behind the visor of his jade helmet. It felt quite unnerving, to say the least, to be stared down by a swarm of great beasts. Who are you to dare stare me down, beasts? No, forget it. There's no time for that. Sunny grinned. That should be enough. With that, he turned into a shadow. And from that shadow, a torrent of ash rolled like a billowing cloud, splitting into helical strands to envelop the swarm of crystal wasps. A moment later, the ash solidified into obsidian wasps, close to 50 of them, against 24 great beasts. 2 for each nightmare creature left in the ice hive. Sunny assumed a tangible form once more, abandoning the towering body of the Shadowspawn in favor of his own speedy and slender body. His smile was cold and cruel. Didn't I say it? Death is inevitable. His obsidian wasps rushed forward, and he lunged at the nearest nightmare creature as well. Before too long, the ice hive was no more, each of its crystalline inhabitants becoming a soldier in his growing army.